several members of Congress joined Ukrainian President Zelensky over Zoom to talk about what support the country needs in its fight against the Russian invasion.
Massachusetts Congressman Bill Keating was one of the lawmakers who took part in that meeting. He joins us live now. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us this morning. First, we want to ask you, President Zelensky is calling for a no-fly zone over Ukraine and for other countries to provide aircraft. Where do you draw the line on how the U.S. can help Ukraine without drawing us into a war with Russia?
Well, a no-fly zone is off the table right now for good reasons. That would entail us knocking out ground defenses, air defenses by Russia, and as well as having, downing Russian aircrafts. That would certainly lead us into a full-scale war where there would be more deaths, more innocent civilian deaths by multiple terms going that way. However, discussions are underway, and that was, I think, something that was really emphasized at yesterday's phone call, that indeed there are air jets, Russian MiGs, Soviet-era Russian MiGs, that Ukrainian soldiers are already equipped to fly and trained to fly. So I think there's a real possibility going forward that those discussions will result in giving Ukraine and their military some air power to fight back at what the Russians are currently doing.
And some lawmakers are calling for increased sanctions on Russia. But yesterday, President Putin likened that and the sanctions to like a declaration of war. Are you concerned that even sanctions could cause this war to expand beyond Ukraine?
I think that's our only tool going forward. It's wise. Russia now, and Putin realizes he's holding a losing hand in the long run. And you're seeing these desperate claims. The key to Putin over the years is this. Look at what he does, not what he says. And that's what we're doing during this. It was interesting in yesterday's call with President Zelensky that he said that he called upon MasterCard and Visa to stop any operations in Russia so that younger people and other people would understand there's a war going on. They're ignorant of that, frankly, doing the blackout of news. And hours after President Zelensky said that, those two companies announced that they were blocking all activities in Russia.
President Zelensky has to be the most watched person in the world right now. What were your impressions of him during that hour-long Zoom? Is he exasperated at this point? What impressed you the most about him?
Well, he shared horrific details. The bombings of college dormitories, the day before, bombings of 2 kindergartens, including a special education school with 50 children killed. They're taking, in one of the major cities, the municipal officials, holding them hostage, taking the mayor of that city into the basement, torturing him and killing him. He spent a great deal of time talking about the threat posed because of the nuclear facilities there as well. So he, in very, very difficult and horrifying detail, explained what was going on, including assassination attempts on his own life.
It's all very horrifying. It has been 11 days since Russia first crossed the border into Ukraine, and Russia seems to be making more and more headway. Can Ukraine survive another 11 days? Well,
it's overwhelming. The Russian attack has really changed from their failure early on to just cruise right through the way they did to some extent in other areas of the world and other interactions they had. They found unforeseen resistance, heroic and courageous resistance. So now they're going to their old playbook, which they used in Syria and Chechnya, of just encircling and bombing cities, hitting civilian targets, hospitals, schools, houses of innocent people. This is what they did in the past. They bomb them in and shell them into submission, and then go in afterwards with a core of resistance. They're going to find a very hard core of resistance when they do that. I think they have the overwhelming numbers where they will be able, most military experts believe, overtake Kyiv, the capital city of Ukraine. However, that's a huge area, the size of Texas, and the resistance is strong. There's no doubt in my mind they can put the veneer of a puppet government into place, but it won't be a legitimate government. It won't be accepted by the people, and it might take several years, but Putin is holding a losing hand.
Okay, Congressman Bill Keating, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Mandela.